At first glance, James Worthy appears to be one of basketball's great success stories. Championships, fame, respect, a career forever tied to one of the most iconic dynasties in sports history. From the outside, it looks like a life built entirely on triumph. But behind the trophies and the highlights lies a quieter, far more painful truth, one that only becomes clearer with time. James Worthy was never meant to be loud. Even in college, surrounded by future stars, he didn't demand attention. He earned it. His game was smooth, efficient, devastatingly effective. When he entered the NBA as the #1 overall pick in 1982, the pressure was enormous. The Los Angeles Lakers weren't just drafting a player. They were drafting a piece of a machine built to win now. Worthy didn't protest that role. He embraced it. Playing alongside Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar meant sacrificing ego for excellence. Worthy did that without complaint. Night after night, he ran the floor, finished fast breaks, guarded elite scorers, and delivered exactly what the team needed. Not more, not less, just perfection. And that perfection became a curse. In a league driven by personalities, Worthy's professionalism often blurred into the background. He wasn't flashy off the court. He didn't stir controversy. He didn't chase headlines. While others built brands, Worthy built trust. Coaches trusted him. Teammates trusted him. Fans trusted him, even if they didn't always celebrate him. In 1988, that trust was rewarded in unforgettable fashion. With the season on the line, James Worthy delivered one of the greatest performances in NBA Finals history, recording a triple-double in Game Day and earning Finals MVP honors. It should have been the defining moment of his legacy. For one night, he was undeniable. But the next morning, the spotlight shifted again, because Worthy never demanded that moment last. As the years passed, the physical cost of his playing style began to surface. His explosive first step, his long strides, his relentless pace, everything that made him special, also punished his body. Knee injuries slowly chipped away at him, stealing pieces of his game until there was nothing left to compensate. By age 34, his career was over. For fans, it felt sudden. For Worthy, it felt like losing a language he'd spoken his entire life. Basketball had given him structure, identity, purpose. When it disappeared, it didn't leave behind peace, it left silence. No practices, no flights, no locker room, no scoreboard to tell him who he was that night. Like many elite athletes, Worthy discovered that retirement doesn't arrive with answers. It arrives with questions. Who am I now? What am I worth without the game? Who notices me when I'm no longer needed? He transitioned into broadcasting, offering thoughtful, intelligent analysis. But even there, he stayed true to himself, measured, calm, reserved. He never reinvented himself as a loud media personality. And while that earned respect, it also meant he faded quietly while others remained visible. The world assumes that silence equals contentment. In reality, it often hides struggle. Worthy's personal life only deepened that struggle. His marriage ended publicly, dragging a deeply private man into unwanted attention. For someone who spent decades controlling his image through discipline and restraint, having personal pain become public spectacle was devastating. Fame, once again, proved to be a double-edged sword, amplifying not just success, but humiliation. What makes James Worthy's story so heartbreaking isn't scandal or downfall. It's something far more subtle. It's the emotional cost of always being dependable, of always fitting perfectly into someone else's system, of being essential, yet rarely celebrated as indispensable. At 64, Worthy stands as a symbol of a generation of athletes who gave everything to their craft and expected nothing in return. He didn't chase legacy. He didn't chase validation. He trusted that excellence would speak for itself. But time has a way of softening even the loudest applause. And for those who lived quietly inside greatness, the silence afterward can be the heaviest burden of all. When the game finally let go of James Worthy, it didn't do so gently. There was no farewell tour, no long goodbye, no moment where he could slowly prepare himself for life without basketball. One day, he was an NBA champion with responsibilities, routines, and relevance. The next, he was a former player learning how quiet the world becomes when you are no longer needed every night. For decades, Worthy had lived inside structure. Practices told him where to be. Games told him who he was. The scoreboard told him whether he mattered that night. When all of that vanished, something deeper than routine disappeared. His sense of direction went with it. Retirement forced him to confront a reality few fans ever imagined. The league that once revolved around him moved on without hesitation. New stars arrived. New narratives took over. The phone rang less. Invitations slowed. And the man once trusted to deliver under the brightest lights was suddenly left alone with his thoughts. This is where the real tragedy begins. Worthy was not wired to seek attention. He didn't crave validation from crowds or cameras. But that didn't mean he was immune to absence. When you spend your life being relied upon, being forgotten feels like rejection, even if no one intends it that way. He stayed close to the game through broadcasting, but even that role came with its own quiet pain. Watching younger players live the life he once had was a daily reminder of what he lost. The adrenaline, the purpose, the feeling that tomorrow's game could change everything. Instead of chasing reinvention, Worthy chose dignity. He spoke with insight, not ego. He analyzed the game without bitterness. But restraint has a cost. In a media world built on volume and controversy, his calm presence slowly blended into the background. And while fans assumed that meant peace, the truth was more complicated. Away from basketball, Worthy faced personal struggles that fame could not shield him from. The end of his marriage became public, turning private heartbreak into something strangers felt entitled to judge. For a man who valued control, privacy, and composure, that exposure was deeply destabilizing. It reinforced a painful truth. Once you are famous, even your lowest moments belong to the public. There was no scandal to distract from the pain, no dramatic comeback, no reinvention arc the media could package neatly. Just a man learning how to live without the one thing that had always defined him. And that kind of loss is invisible. Worthy's tragedy isn't that he failed after basketball. It's that he succeeded quietly, so quietly that the world never stopped to ask what it cost him. He was the ultimate teammate, the perfect system player, the man who never demanded more than his share. But when your entire career is built on serving something bigger than yourself, you eventually face a haunting question. What's left when that thing is gone? At 64, James Worthy lives with a legacy that is secure but emotionally unresolved. His name is etched in history, yet his story remains unfinished in the eyes of many fans. He represents a side of greatness we rarely talk about, the loneliness that follows discipline, the emptiness that follows purpose, and the silence that follows applause. Because not all tragedies are loud. Some unfold slowly, quietly, and long after the crowd has stopped watching. As the years passed, James Worthy began to realize that time doesn't just take away youth, it reshapes memory. Championships fade into montages. Great performances become trivia questions. Even legends slowly turn into references instead of realities. And for someone like Worthy, whose greatness was built on consistency rather than spectacle, that fading feels sharper. He remained connected to the Lakers organization, a franchise that defined his life. Banners hung. Trophies gleamed. The memories were preserved perfectly inside an arena filled with noise and nostalgia. Yet there was an unspoken distance between celebration and belonging. History honored him, but history didn't need him anymore. And that distinction matters more than people think. Worthy was never the kind of man to demand recognition. He didn't resent the spotlight others received. But over time, the absence of acknowledgement began to feel like erasure. Conversations about the Showtime Lakers often centered on personalities, not pillars. On charisma, not sacrifice. On who entertained the most, not who delivered every single time. He was always there when the team needed him, rarely when the story needed a face. In private moments, that reality weighs heavy. Because when you spend your life being essential, invisibility becomes its own kind of pain. Worthy gave everything to a system that rewarded unity over individuality. When the system moved on, it took its validation with it. There's a quiet loneliness that settles in when you realize your best years were lived for something larger than yourself, and that something no longer exists in the same way. Worthy didn't just lose basketball. He lost the version of himself that only basketball allowed him to be. Age brings reflection whether you want or not. At 64, Worthy sees the full arc of his life clearly now. The discipline, the sacrifice, the restraint. He sees the moments he chose silence over self-promotion, team success over personal legacy, stability over spotlight. And while those choices brought greatness, they also came with consequences no one warned him about. Because greatness doesn't guarantee fulfillment. There is no ceremony for the emotional cost of being dependable. No banner for the nights you carried pressure quietly. No trophy for the times you held yourself back so others could shine brighter. James Worthy's tragedy is not that he was overlooked in his prime. It's that the qualities that made him great, humility, discipline, loyalty, are the very traits that make his pain easy to ignore now. He lives with respect, but also with distance. With legacy, but without noise. With admiration, but little intimacy. And that combination can feel hollow when the adrenaline fades and the nights grow long. Some men burn bright and burn out. Others endure. Worthy endured. And sometimes endurance leaves deeper scars than failure ever could. Because when the world finally stops asking for you, all that remains is the question you avoided for decades. Was it enough? As the years accumulate, James Worthy finds himself at a crossroads where the past no longer serves as a source of pride, but as a mirror, reflecting a life spent in service of something far larger than himself. The fame, the championships, the adoration, all of it was part of a larger narrative. But as the accolades fade into history, one question looms over him like a shadow. Was it worth it? The answer is complicated. Worthy's career was one of the most decorated in basketball history. But what does a man do with the weight of greatness when the crowd stops cheering and the jersey is no longer part of the equation? What happens when the game, which has been the source of his identity and purpose for so long, is no longer there to define him? For years, James Worthy has navigated life with quiet strength. But as he's grown older, the silence of retirement has become deafening. His name will forever be etched in Lakers lore, but his story remains incomplete. He was the ultimate teammate, the unsung hero behind Magic and Kareem, the reliable force when the team needed him most. But when you've spent your life supporting something larger than yourself, it's hard not to wonder what's left when the lights go down. He has never regretted his decision to step away from the spotlight after his playing days were over, but the transition from athlete to ordinary man was harder than anyone could have predicted. Worthy didn't crave the fame that others chased, but that didn't mean he was immune to its absence. He lived for the game, and when that chapter closed, he faced the daunting reality of finding meaning in a world that had long since moved on. In the early years of retirement, he threw himself into work as a broadcaster and analyst. He offered insight into the game, but the role always felt like a temporary patch for a wound that could never fully heal. The fact that Worthy didn't seek personal glory was admirable, but the very thing that made him great, the restraint, the humility, the discipline, also made it difficult for the world to truly see his pain. At 64, Worthy is no longer the young player who glided across the court with ease. The reflections of the past are a mixed bag, pride in his accomplishments, but also a deep sense of longing. He gave everything to a team, to a dynasty, to an identity that was far bigger than himself. But at what cost? The tragedy lies in the realization that all that dedication, all that sacrifice, came with a price that few ever noticed. Greatness demands so much more than what people see. It takes everything. And when the accolades stop coming, when the spotlight fades, the cost of greatness becomes a heavy burden to carry in the quiet moments of life. For James Worthy, the question remains, Was it worth it? The championships? The accolades? The fame? The world may never know the answer. But as he continues to reflect on his life, he's learning to come to terms with the quiet, private truth that only those who have walked a similar path can understand. The pain of greatness is not always visible. It's in the moments of solitude, in the silences between applause, in the fading echo of a name that was once on everyone's lips. In the end, Worthy's legacy is not just defined by the titles or the stats, but by the quiet resilience it took to live a life always in the shadow of something bigger. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest cost of all is not the price paid on the court, but the price paid in the silence afterward. James Worthy's tragedy is that his story is not as simple as success and failure, triumph and defeat. His story is about the quiet sacrifices of being great and the lingering questions that follow when the game finally ends. As the years accumulate, James Worthy finds himself more introspective than ever. He has lived through the highs of championships and recognition, but now, at 64, he's learning that peace does not always come with success. There's no final buzzer in life, no perfect ending to a story. And perhaps that's the most difficult part, the realization that, in the absence of constant applause, you must learn to define your worth on your own terms. Worthy's life has always been about doing the right thing, playing the game the right way for the right reasons. His sense of duty to his team, his franchise, and the fans was unmatched. But in the quiet moments, as his career fades further into the past, he's faced with a question that's hard to ignore. How do you live a full life when the one thing that defined you is no longer there? In many ways, James Worthy's journey through retirement mirrors that of many athletes who, for years, were defined by the game they played. It's easy to be a hero when you're wearing a jersey, competing in front of thousands. But once that's gone, who are you? For Worthy, it hasn't been about reinvention, because he's never felt the need to be something he's not. Rather, it's been about finding a way to exist in a world that's forgotten the quiet sacrifices of greatness. As a broadcaster, he remained engaged with the game, but there was always a sense that it wasn't enough. The microphone couldn't fill the void left by the court. And with time, even that role began to feel more like a footnote than a new chapter. Worthy, ever the humble figure, never demanded more. But in the silence of post-career life, he came to understand that even the most stoic and selfless among us have moments where the absence of recognition can feel like neglect. The tragedy of Worthy's life isn't about falling from grace. It's about learning that the world will move on, regardless of how hard you've worked or how much you've sacrificed. The game doesn't stop for anyone. Fans cheer for a new generation, a new set of stars. The Lakers dynasty eventually evolves, and new legends rise. But for those who gave their hearts to the game, there's a quiet grief that comes with watching the spotlight shift. Yet, there's a quiet redemption in this acceptance. While the world has moved on, James Worthy has begun to find his peace. Not in the spotlight, not in the roar of the crowd, but in the quiet moments with family, friends, and his own reflection. He's learning that true peace comes from within. It comes from understanding that the game was only one part of his life, a chapter that, while defining, does not dictate who he is now. The hardest lesson Worthy has had to learn is that legacy is not always loud. It doesn't need to be repeated in every conversation or written in every history book. Sometimes a legacy is the quiet understanding that, even without the accolades, you've lived with honor, with integrity, and with respect. His legacy is not just in the championships or the accolades. It's in the way he carried himself, the way he played the game, and the way he allowed others to shine without demanding the same. At 64, James Worthy continues to learn and grow. He no longer seeks validation from the outside world. He no longer feels the need to prove himself. Instead, he's coming to terms with the fact that the most important measure of his worth is not what others see, but what he knows to be true. He gave everything he had to the game, to his teammates, to his family, and that in itself is enough. The quiet pain of being overlooked will always linger, but so will the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his life, even in its most private moments, was lived with purpose and dignity. And in that, James Worthy will always find peace. James Worthy's life has always been a delicate balance of sacrifice and achievement. But now, at 64, he's embarking on the final chapters of his personal journey. His career, defined by championships and quiet brilliance, has left a complex legacy, one that he's only recently begun to fully appreciate in its entirety. While others may have forgotten the silent contributions he made, Worthy has come to terms with the fact that his legacy is one of depth, not just glory. As his years in basketball became more distant, Worthy started to realize that perhaps his greatest triumph wasn't on the court. It was in how he lived beyond it. And this discovery has brought him a new kind of peace. The recognition that, although the spotlight may have been dim for him after retirement, the essence of who he was never truly faded. The core principles that drove him, the quiet discipline, the teamwork, the commitment, still hold great meaning in his life today. For most of his career, Worthy was the model of restraint. His teammates called him steady. Fans remembered him for his ability to execute under pressure. Coaches relied on him to get the job done without complaint. Yet, in the wake of his retirement, Worthy was forced to confront something that many athletes struggle with: the silence that follows greatness. The public, always fixated on the now, often forgets that the greats were once ordinary people who still struggle with life's most mundane challenges. But Worthy has never been one to shrink from hard truths. In the years following his playing days, he spent time reflecting on the significance of his career. He had no regrets about how he played the game, but he found himself questioning how he had defined himself. Was he more than just a basketball player? Had he given enough attention to the relationships, the people, and the aspects of his life outside of the court that truly mattered? And slowly, as he turned inward, Worthy began to realize that his worth was not only defined by his on-court accomplishments. The quiet moments with his family, the relationships he built over the years, and the sense of peace he found away from the public, all contributed to the man he had become. In this self-reflection, Worthy discovered a new kind of redemption. He no longer looked to the world for validation. He didn't need the media's acknowledgement or the fans' applause. His legacy wasn't about how many people remembered his name. It was about how he had lived with honor, how he had impacted the lives of those closest to him, and how he had shown up for others when no one was watching. At 64, he understands that peace is an internal process. It's not about changing how others see you. It's about accepting who you are, flaws and all. The emptiness of retirement, once an overwhelming force, is now something he has made his peace with. The quietness no longer feels like abandonment. Instead, it feels like freedom. Freedom to live without the weight of expectations. Freedom to redefine who he is without the need to prove himself. Worthy's journey of self-discovery has been a slow one, but it's one that has brought him to a place where he can finally appreciate the fullness of his life. It's not the accolades or the championships that define him now. It's the understanding that his legacy will always be woven into the fabric of the Lakers, into the hearts of the fans who remember his contributions, and into the lives of those who truly knew him. In the end, James Worthy's story is not defined by the tragedy of being overlooked or forgotten. It's defined by the quiet strength he showed in being true to himself, in giving his all without needing the spotlight, and in finding peace with a legacy that continues to inspire, even if it's not always recognized by the world. As James Worthy continues his journey beyond basketball, his legacy is undergoing a transformation. The narrative that once confined him to the shadows of others is slowly evolving. The quiet, reliable star of the Showtime Lakers is now being recognized in a new light, a symbol of consistency, humility, and leadership that transcends the game itself. In a modern era, where basketball is as much about personality as it is about performance, Worthy's example is one of the few remaining links to a time when the game was played with a different set of values. The younger generation of players, growing up in an era dominated by social media and constant self-promotion, may not fully understand the significance of Worthy's contributions. But those who take the time to learn the history of the game are beginning to appreciate the subtleties of his greatness. As athletes like LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Kevin Durant shape the game today, Worthy's influence continues to be felt, albeit in ways that aren't always visible. His leadership style, one that focused on team success over individual glory, has been carried forward by these modern stars who understand that championships are earned through collective effort, not personal accolades. While these players may not have shared the same quiet persona that Worthy embodied, they've taken the lessons of selflessness and work ethic to heart. Worthy's legacy now serves as a model for players seeking longevity and success without the need for constant attention. His example shows that greatness doesn't always require fame. It requires commitment, discipline, and the willingness to put the team first. In a time when the spotlight is often shared by those who seek it the most, Worthy's path to greatness reminds us that sometimes the most impactful stars shine quietly. Moreover, Worthy's influence extends beyond the court. He's become a mentor and a trusted voice in basketball circles. Younger players look to him not just for advice on how to succeed in the NBA, but for insight on how to carry oneself with dignity when the cameras are off. His quiet approach to life after basketball has helped shape the way athletes view their post-career journeys. While many seek to maintain their celebrity status, Worthy's choice to step back from the spotlight has shown that peace can be found in stepping away. His role as an ambassador for the Lakers, and his presence at key moments in the franchise's ongoing legacy, ensures that his impact is felt by the next generation of basketball players, fans, and analysts. Whether it's through his work with the Lakers alumni, his involvement in charitable efforts, or his candid interviews, Worthy is reclaiming his place, not just in history, but in the present. The younger generation of players and fans are beginning to look back at Worthy with new appreciation, understanding that his greatness was never about his moment in the spotlight. It was about his commitment to the team and the game. At 64, James Worthy has come to understand that legacy isn't just about the championships you win or the accolades you collect. It's about the lives you touch, the lessons you leave behind, and the impact you have on those who come after you. He's found a new sense of purpose in knowing that his story, once overshadowed by louder personalities, is being heard in ways he never imagined. Now, as a mentor and an elder statesman of the game, Worthy has come full circle. He is no longer the player waiting for recognition. He is the one offering it to others. His impact is no longer just about the number of banners hanging in the rafters of the Staples Center. It's about the countless players, coaches, and fans who look to him as a beacon of how to live with integrity, humility, and excellence, both on and off the court. James Worthy's legacy is being redefined not by the noise of his past, but by the quiet strength of his present. He has come to understand that the true measure of greatness is not found in the applause or the cameras. It is found in the lasting influence you leave on the world and the people who carry your lessons forward.